Maybe you are lying there, listening to the hum of the world fading, yet your mind is still busy arranging the furniture of tomorrow. Perhaps you find yourself checking the time, then calculating how many hours of rest remain, only to have that very calculation tighten the knot in your chest. It is a strange, quiet kind of fatigue, isn't it? You are not physically running. You are not lifting heavy things, yet you feel as though you have been hauling a massive, invisible load across a long, uneven field for the entire day. Your body is ready for the stillness of the room, for the cool touch of the sheets, and for the dim, amber glow of the lamp beside you. But your awareness is still hovering at the edge of the doorway, waiting for something to happen, waiting for a signal, waiting to ensure that nothing is slipping through the cracks. You are not broken, dear friend. You are not malfunctioning, and you are not behind in the race of your own life. What you are feeling is simply the heavy, exhausted wake of a mind that has been taught to believe its constant presence is the only thing keeping the world from unraveling. It is a misunderstanding, a beautiful and tragic error, that you must be the keeper of every outcome. You have been trying to protect your own heart by keeping a frantic, constant watch over the horizon of your life. But that very vigilance has become the thief of the rest you so deeply deserve. Tonight, we will explore a gentle, different way to stand at the edge of your own awareness. We will not be trying to force your mind to go dark, for that would be like trying to stop the tide by commanding it to stay still instead. We will look at why you feel this need to keep a constant, sharp lookout for danger, and we will begin to understand the paradox of the lighthouse keeper. You see, the paradox is this. The mind often believes that if it stops worrying, it has stopped caring. But the truth is that your worry is not the same thing as your love. Your anxiety is not a protective shield. It is a heavy, rusted lock that keeps you from ever truly sitting down. The Buddha pointed toward a freedom that does not require you to hold the world together with your thoughts. He noticed that we often suffer twice. Once, when the reality of life presents a challenge, and a second time when we add our own desperate, frantic attempts to control that reality. That second wound, the one you have been inflicting upon yourself by rehearsing the future and replaying the past, is where most of your exhaustion lives. Tonight, you are invited to let go of the need to be the guardian of your own tomorrow. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be imperfect. You are allowed to step back from the lantern and simply exist in the quiet, dark, and perfectly safe room that surrounds you. Take a slow, deep breath and let it out with a soft sigh. Feel the way the mattress supports you, how it does not ask anything of you, how it holds your weight without needing you to hold it in return. You do not have to solve a single one of your problems. Right now, there is no urgency. The dawn is many hours away, and the world will continue to spin even if you decide to lay down your burden. You have been walking a path that is cluttered with the sharp stones of your own expectations, and tonight we are just going to look at the path. We are not going to move the stones. We are just going to notice where they are. And then we are going to walk through them with a lighter step. Maybe you have felt this specific kind of loneliness before, the feeling that if you were not the one to notice the cracks, no one else would. It is a burden you have carried so quietly and so faithfully that you have forgotten it is optional. But you are here now, in the stillness, and that is a significant choice. You have chosen to turn your gaze away from the horizon for a moment, to see if there is something else, something deeper, something kinder, waiting for you here. This is the first step. It is not a leap. It is just the simple, brave act of stopping your pace and allowing your breath to return to its natural, unforced rhythm. As you lie here, feel the space in the room. The air is still. The shadows in the corner are deep and comfortable, holding the mysteries of the night without any need for us to identify them. You are safe enough to soften. You are safe enough to let the rigid, protective walls of your mind start to sag and sway in the breeze. There is no one coming to inspect your work, and there is no ledger you must balance before you close your eyes. You have reached the end of the day, and for these moments, you are finally free from the role of the sentinel. Imagine, if you will, the lighthouse standing on a desolate, jagged rock far out at sea. Think of the keeper who lives there, a person who has spent a lifetime believing that without his light, the ships would be lost. Every evening, he climbs the spiral stairs, his legs aching, his mind rehearsing the mechanics of the lamp, his eyes scanning the black water for the first sign of a sail. He is a person who has forgotten how to be anything other than a guardian. He has forgotten the smell of the grass, the warmth of a fire in a home, and the way the world feels when you are not responsible for its safety. He is the master of the light, but he is the slave to the ocean. But what if the light was never meant to be a cage? What if the lighthouse was meant to be a service, a gift rather than a prison? We will walk with this keeper in a moment, and we will see how his struggle reflects the way you have been holding on to your own life. You are not the keeper of the tides, and you are not the savior of the ships. You are the witness of your own experience, and tonight, that witness is finally invited to take a long, deep, and restorative rest. Let your hands move to a place where they feel completely comfortable. Maybe they rest on your stomach, or perhaps they lie loosely at your sides. Feel the texture of the fabric beneath your fingers. This is the anchor. This is the reality. Not the thoughts of tomorrow, not the regrets of yesterday, but the solid, undeniable sensation of your own skin. This is where you belong. You are not in the future, and you are not in the past. You are here, in this room, in this breath, and this is exactly enough. You might notice that your mind tries to pull you back into the cycle, wanting to remind you of a pending task or a missed opportunity. This is normal. It is just the mind, doing what it has been trained to do, like a dog that keeps bringing the same stick back to your feet, hoping you will throw it again. You do not need to scold the dog. You do not need to throw the stick. You can simply notice that the dog is there, and then, with great gentleness, you can choose to keep your hands still. You do not have to obey the urge to engage. You can just let the thought sit there, like a tired traveler who has decided to rest by the side of the road, and you can keep walking, or rather, keep resting, in your own steady awareness. There is a profound, quiet healing that happens when you stop trying to convince yourself that you are safe. When you stop fighting for peace, it often arrives on its own, like the dew that settles on the grass when the heat of the day has finally dissipated. You have been generating so much heat, so much friction, by trying to manufacture your own sense of security through constant thought. But the security you seek is already here. It is in the foundation of your own existence. It is in the fact that you are, and that you have been, and that you will continue to be, long after this particular worry has dissolved into the morning. Do you hear the rhythm of the night? It is consistent. It is slow. It does not worry about whether the stars are aligned, and it does not worry about whether the dawn will arrive on time. It just is. And you are part of this rhythm. You are not an outsider looking in. You are the night, you are the silence, and you are the breath. Breath. Let yourself be carried by this just for a little while. Nothing will be lost if you loosen your grip. The lighthouse will not stop being a lighthouse simply because the keeper has finally decided to sit down and close his eyes. You are here, and you are doing something very brave. Simply by choosing to listen to these words, you are acknowledging that the way you have been living has been heavy, and you are opening a small door to a different way of existing. This is all that is required of you. You do not have to understand it all tonight. You do not have to reach some great, enlightened state. You just have to be willing to be here with yourself in the dark, without judging the fact that you are tired. If you are ready, we will begin to move toward the story of the keeper, but there is no rush. Let your body settle into the earth. Let your bones feel heavy and secure, and let your awareness float like a leaf on a slow-moving stream. There is nothing to fix tonight. There is only this room, this moment, and the quiet, steady beating of your own heart. Everything else can wait. The world will be there in the morning, and it will be enough. But for now, the only thing that matters is the way your chest rises and falls, the way the night air brushes against your skin, and the way you are, finally, truly, coming home to yourself, high above the coastline, where the salt air strips the paint from the wood and turns the sky a bruised, restless grey. There lived a keeper of a lonely stone tower. His name was Elias, and for 30 years he had climbed the spiral stairs at dusk to light the great oil lamp. The channel below was treacherous, filled with jagged teeth of rock that had claimed many ships. In the centuries before the tower was built, Elias took his duty with a gravity that went beyond the requirements of the job. He did not merely light the lamp. He became the light itself, pacing the gallery until dawn, convinced that every flicker of the flame was a promise he had made to the ocean. One autumn, the shipping lanes shifted far to the south, diverted by the discovery of a deeper, safer passage. The ships stopped coming. The channel below went silent save for the constant, mournful cry of the gulls and the relentless rhythmic thud of the surf against the cliff. Yet Elias continued. Every evening, he hauled the heavy brass canisters of oil up the stairs. He polished the glass lens until it shone like a diamond. He watched the empty horizon with eyes that had grown cloudy from years of staring into the dark. He was a man possessed by the belief that if he stopped the vigil, the world would somehow forget how to be safe. A few miles down the coast, tucked into a fold of the hills, lived a woman known as Sister Kale. She was a woodworker, a person who spent her days shaping driftwood into simple, sturdy stools and bowls. She was not a teacher in the formal sense, but people in the coastal villages often brought their troubled thoughts to her doorstep when they felt they were losing their way. One morning, as the fog clung to the cliffs like wet wool, Kale decided to climb the path to the lighthouse. She carried only a small, unfinished wooden bowl in her hands. When she arrived, Elias was slumped on a wooden bench, his face lined with the exhaustion of a man who had not slept deeply in decades. His hands were stained with soot and his eyes were raw. He looked at her with a mix of defiance and deep, bone-weary shame. He had been holding the lamp and now he seemed to have no idea how to let it go. Kale did not offer him words of comfort. She did not tell him that his work was over, or that he should be proud of his years of service. Instead, she sat down on the cold stone floor beside him, placing the small wooden bowl between them. The bowl was plain, fashioned from a piece of weathered cedar that had been polished by the sea until it felt as soft as silk. It was empty. She set it there, its circular rim catching the dim light of the tower, and then she waited. The silence stretched out, filled only by the wind whistling through the ventilation slits in the wall. Elias watched the bowl. He expected her to say something about the ships, or the oil, or the futility of his vigil. But she simply sat, her own hands resting quietly in her lap, watching the light dance on the grain of the wood. After a long time, the keeper cleared his throat. His voice was like grinding stones. He asked her why she had brought an empty bowl to a man who had no food to give. Kale smiled, a gentle movement that seemed to brighten the dim air of the room. She told him that she had not brought the bowl to be filled. She had brought it because it was a container, and she wanted to see if he knew the difference between the vessel and the water it held. She picked up the bowl, held it out to him, and asked him to feel how light it was. Elias took the wood in his calloused hands. It was indeed featherlight, nothing like the heavy brass lamps he had been hauling all his life. He felt the smooth, curved interior. He felt the way the wood seemed to breathe. Kale then asked him if the bowl would be any less of a bowl if it were empty. She asked him if its purpose was defined by what it contained, or if its purpose was simply to exist as a space for potential. Elias looked down at his own hands, red and swollen from years of labor, and he felt a strange, cold shiver run through him. He had spent his life thinking that the lighthouse was the bowl and his anxiety was the water. And if the water ever ran out, the bowl had no reason to be. Kale stood up and walked to the gallery window, looking out over the dark, empty sea. She did not look back at him. She remarked that the ocean does not ask the moon to pull the tide, and the tide does not ask the shore to be its anchor. They simply move in harmony, a dance of forces that require no one to keep watch. She suggested that perhaps the keeper was not the one responsible for the safety of the ships, but simply the one who had been standing in the way of the light. She left the bowl on the stone bench and descended the stairs, leaving Elias alone with his lamp. That night, Elias did not pace. He sat by the lens, but he did not watch for ships. He watched the bowl. He noticed that the bowl was not trying to be a cup, or a plate, or a weapon. It was just a space. He thought about the years he had spent filling his own life with the heavy oil of duty and the thick soot of his own fear. He realized he had been treating his own mind like a vessel that would shatter if it were ever empty. He had been so terrified of the emptiness that he had kept his life constantly overflowing with the frantic, exhausting work of vigilance. The lesson did not arrive as a sudden epiphany, a flash of lightning that burned away his worries. It came slowly, like the tide receding from the shore, exposing the stones that had been hidden beneath the surf. He looked at his hands, and for the first time in 30 years, he did not see them as instruments of maintenance. He saw them as hands that could simply rest. He realized that the lighthouse did not need him to suffer to perform its function. The tower would stand, the wind would blow, and the sea would remain, regardless of whether he was there to worry about it. He thought of the bowl, sitting there in the dark, perfectly fine in its emptiness. It did not crave the water. It did not fear the drought. It was at peace with its own nature. Elias felt a sudden, sharp ache in his chest, not a pain of loss, but a pain of recognition. He had been fighting the emptiness of the sea for a lifetime, never realizing that the emptiness was where his freedom lived. He turned the lamp down, not out, down, but down, until the flame was a tiny, pulsing ember. In the dark, the room was suddenly much larger. The shadows retreated, not because they were defeated, but because they were invited to share the space. He leaned back against the cold stone wall. He did not try to empty his mind. He did not practice any great philosophy. He simply allowed himself to be a person sitting in a room, in the dark, with nothing to do. It was the most terrifying moment of his life, and yet it was the first time he had truly breathed. The wind outside still howled, but it no longer sounded like a threat. It sounded like the world, moving along on its own accord, asking nothing of him. He was not the keeper of the tides. He was simply a man. And he was, for the first time, enough. He closed his eyes, and he did not follow the thoughts that arose. He watched them drift past, like the gulls circling the tower. He saw the memory of the ships, and he saw the worry about the oil, and he saw the fear of the coming dawn. He acknowledged them, gave them a brief nod, and let them go on their way. He did not need to be the hero. He did not need to be the protector. He just needed to be the space where the night could exist. The bowl was empty, and because it was empty, it was capable of holding everything. He too was becoming a space. The night air felt cool against his face. He felt the weight of his own existence, not as a burden to be carried, but as a presence to be felt. He did not worry about the future. He did not replay the past. He was simply present in the room, at the top of the tower, under the vast and silent stars. He wondered if Kale knew what she had done, or if she had simply offered the bowl as a mirror for a man who had forgotten what a reflection looked like. He did not need the answer. The question itself was enough to lull his weary mind into a state of deep, quiet surrender. His breathing slowed, matching the steady, heavy pulse of the ocean against the base of the cliffs. He felt his shoulders drop, the muscles unraveling like a knot, being pulled loose by an unseen hand. The tightness in his chest began to dissolve, replaced by a feeling of warmth that started in his center and flowed outward to his fingers and toes. He was becoming as still as the stone he lived upon. He was becoming as spacious as the sky. The vigil was over. The lamp was quiet. The keeper was resting. And, for the first time in 30 years, the world was safe enough to hold itself. The lighthouse of Elias is not a story about someone else. It is a map of the hidden landscape within your own mind. When we watch Elias hauling oil canisters up those endless stone stairs, we are witnessing the physical manifestation of your own tireless vigilance. You recognize that frantic climb. You have spent your nights and days performing the same labor, worrying about the integrity of your own life, fearing that if you take your eyes off the horizon for even a moment, something vital will be lost to the dark. This story is not telling us that vigilance is inherently bad. It is showing us that vigilance becomes a trap when it transforms from a duty into an identity. Elias had mistakenly merged his worth with the work. He believed that he was not just the person who kept the light, but that he was the reason the sea was navigable at all. Do you see how often you do this? You take a necessary responsibility, like caring for your work or protecting your loved ones, and you quietly begin to insist that everything depends entirely on your own internal pressure. You feel that if you do not carry the weight will crush someone else, or perhaps destroy the path entirely. But the Buddha observed that we often suffer twice. We experience the inevitable difficulty of a situation, which we might call the first wave, and then we invite a second wave, which is the frantic, self-imposed story that we must hold the ocean in place. That second wave is where you are drowning. It is the layer of judgment you place upon your own exhaustion. It is the belief that if you are not constantly concerned, you are being irresponsible. Notice how the keeper's pain was not actually in the ocean, nor was it in the lighthouse. His pain was in his refusal to accept that the channel had moved, and the ships had found their own way. He was trying to preserve a past necessity long after it had lost its purpose. This is what we mean when we talk about clinging. It is not always about holding on to something shiny or pleasant. Often, we cling to our own struggles because they are the only tools we know how to use to measure our importance. Think of how often you add this extra burden to your life. When you make a mistake, the event itself is the first wave. It is a thing that happened, and it is finished. But then you begin the second wave. You replay the scene, you analyze your failures, you berate yourself for being weak, and you construct an elaborate future where this mistake ruins everything. You are hauling canisters of oil to a tower where no ships are coming. You are keeping the light burning for a channel that is already empty. This extra labor is not helping you. It is only burning through the limited precious oil of your own spirit. When Sister Kegel brought that wooden bowl to the tower, she was not trying to take away his purpose. She was trying to show him the capacity of his own existence. The bowl did not need to be filled with water to be a bowl. It was already defined by its space. You are a vessel of awareness, not a vessel of obligation. You have spent so much time trying to fill yourself with the heavy, frantic activity of control that you have forgotten the vast, quiet space that lives at your center. That space is not empty in the way a desert is empty. It is spacious in the way a room is ready to be entered. This wisdom does not require you to stop acting or to abandon the people you love. It does not ask you to become indifferent or cold. It invites you to recognize the difference between the lighthouse and the sea. You are responsible for the flame of your own presence, but you are not responsible for the entire ocean. When you try to be the master of the currents, you inevitably lose your own balance. You are not meant to command the tides of your life. You are meant to shine your light upon them with clarity and then allow the currents to flow where they must. Consider the feeling of relief that hit Elias when he finally sat down. It was not a defeat. It was a liberation. He realized that the world was moving on its own. The stars were rising, the winds were shifting, and the sea was rolling against the rocks without needing his permission or his anxiety. You have been holding your breath for a very long time, waiting for the safety you were promised. But safety is not something you build by worrying. Safety is found when you realize you are part of the vast, natural unfolding of the night itself. You have been living under the impression that your anxiety is a guard dog. You think that if you stop the anxiety, you are letting the guard dog go, and then the gates will be left open. But the Buddha suggests that the guard dog is actually eating all your food and keeping you awake. You are so exhausted from managing the alarm that you have no energy left to actually enjoy the house you are protecting. What if you allowed yourself to stand at the window instead? What if you looked out at the ocean, acknowledged the beauty and the danger of it, and then trusted that you were capable of responding when the time was right, rather than trying to respond to every phantom ship in your head? This is the essence of what we call mindfulness. It is not the act of silencing your mind. It is the act of noticing the canisters of oil you are hauling and asking yourself if there is actually a ship in the channel. Most of the time, the answer is no. Most of the time, the ship you are worrying about is a ghost. It is a thought of a conversation you had 5 years ago. It is a fear of a scenario that exists only in your imagination. By the time you notice the ghost, you are already shivering, you are already tired, and you are already building a prison out of your own concern. Do not fear the silence that comes when you stop hauling the oil. When you finally drop the heavy brass canisters, the silence will feel like a void at first. You might even feel a sudden, sharp pang of guilt. You might think that if you are not working, you are somehow failing. This is only the habit of the keeper, protesting the loss of his accustomed load. Let the guilt be there. Do not try to argue with it, and do not try to fix it. Just observe it. Say to yourself, there is the feeling of guilt. There is the old belief that I must carry the world. Then, turn your attention to the feeling of your own body. Feel the weight of your limbs, the softness of the bed, and the rhythm of your breath. These things are real. These things are the foundation of your life. The worry is a cloud, but the foundation is the earth. When you keep your focus on the foundation, the clouds lose their power to dictate your weather. You can watch them pass by. You can even acknowledge that they are beautiful in their own way, but you no longer feel the need to chase them or fight them or build a monument to their existence. The Buddha taught that we are often like people who have been struck by an arrow, and then, in our panic, we shoot ourselves with a second arrow. The first arrow is the life event, a setback, a disappointment, a moment of loneliness. We cannot always stop the first arrow from arriving, but the second arrow is entirely our own creation. It is the self-reproach, the analysis, the frantic search for a way to have avoided the pain. Tonight, you're invited to put down the bow. You're invited to stop shooting. The second arrow, you're invited to simply sit with the first wound, clean it with the gentle water of your own compassion, and let it heal in its own time. You have spent so many years thinking that if you were just a little bit more careful, if you were just a little bit more vigilant, you could prevent the next arrow from hitting. But this is the paradox. The more you defend yourself against the world, the more you suffer from your own defenses. You are creating a fortress out of your own mind, and you are trapped inside. True peace is not found by building walls. It is found by realizing that you are the space in which the arrows land, and you are also the space in which they dissipate. The bowl that Kale brought to the tower was an invitation to be empty. Emptiness is not a bad word. It does not mean you are less than you were. It means you are finally free from the need to be something else. You are already a full, complete expression of the present moment. You do not need to fill yourself with the oil of anxiety to prove that you are worthy of existing. Your presence is enough. Your breath is enough. The way your heart continues to beat, even when you have forgotten to hold the world together, is a miracle that requires no intervention from your thoughts. When you feel that tightness in your chest, that familiar pull to start the vigil again, just pause. Remind yourself that you have put down the canisters. You have climbed down from the spiral stairs. You are in the room of your own life, and the lamp is already dimmed. There is no ship in the channel tonight. There is only the vast, calm, and welcoming dark. Let yourself sink into that dark. Let yourself be carried by the knowledge that the world is being taken care of by forces much older and much wiser than your own frantic attempts at control. You are not abandoning your life. You are simply stepping out of the way of your own peace. You are allowing the natural order of things to unfold without your constant supervision. You will still be there tomorrow. You will still be capable, and you will still be ready to greet the day. But for these next few hours, you are invited to be the bowl. You are invited to be the empty, spacious, and perfectly quiet vessel that rests in the gentle hands of the night. Feel how the pressure leaves your body as you agree to this. Feel how the air becomes lighter when you stop trying to hold it up. This is the beginning of the rest you have been searching for all along. It is waiting for you in the simple, honest acknowledgement that you have finally finished your work for the day. You have been hauling the heavy brass canisters of your own worries for a long time. It is an exhausting task, and it is natural that you feel the need for a moment of genuine, unhurried rest. Right now, in the quiet of this room, you have the opportunity to set the load down. You do not need to do this perfectly. You do not need to clear your mind of every lingering concern. You only need to notice the weight you are currently holding. And then, if it feels right to you, choose to place it on the stone floor for a while. Begin by bringing your awareness to your body. Feel the weight of your limbs pressing down into the mattress. Notice the way the air in the room moves against your skin. You are not a tower that must withstand a gale. You are a person in a quiet room, and there is nowhere else you need to be. If your mind feels like a series of busy staircases, let them be busy. You do not have to climb them tonight. You can sit at the base of the tower and watch the stairs, rather than feeling like you must walk them. Take a long, slow breath in through your nose, letting it fill your lungs, and then release it through your mouth with a soft, audible sound. As you exhale, imagine that you are releasing a small amount of the tension in your jaw and your shoulders. You do not have to force the relaxation. Simply invite the muscles to loosen, acknowledging that they have been working very hard to protect you. They've been doing their duty, but they are allowed to stand down for a few hours. Think of the wooden bowl that Sister Kale brought to the tower. Imagine that bowl resting on a table right in front of you. It is simple, it is empty, and it is entirely enough. Now, look into the landscape of your own mind. Is there a specific thought that has been pulling at your sleeve today? Maybe it is a doubt about your progress, or a worry about someone you care for, or a lingering sting from a mistake. You do not need to push this thought away. It is not an intruder. It is just a traveler. Take that thought as clearly as you can see it, and imagine placing it gently into the empty wooden bowl. You are not throwing it away. You are simply giving it a place to rest, so that it does not have to be carried in your hands anymore. Look at the thought sitting there in the bowl. It is just a thought. It is not the truth of who you are. It is not the entire ocean. It is just a small, singular item. See if you can look at it without needing to solve it, without needing to rewrite it, and without needing to rewrite. Again, notice the space that opens up in your hands now that they are free. This is the space that the keeper of the lighthouse had forgotten. This is the space that you have been neglecting in your rush to maintain your own sense of safety. Stay with this feeling of empty hands for a moment. If the mind starts to rush back in with new tasks, new worries, or new critiques of your performance, do not worry. This is what the mind does. Just notice that the mind is busy, and then imagine yourself placing those thoughts into the bowl as well. You can continue to do this as many times as you need. There is no limit to the space that bowl can provide. You are the observer of the bowl and the observer of the thoughts. You are the stillness that watches the movement. You do not have to be the movement itself. If you feel a surge of guilt for stopping, name it. Just say to yourself, there is the feeling of guilt, and then place that feeling into the bowl too. You are learning to sit in the room without needing to be the keeper of the light. The air in the room remains quiet and steady. The darkness is not threatening. It is the soft fabric that holds all things, and it is holding you right now. Notice how the breath comes and goes on its own. You do not have to orchestrate it. The body knows how to breathe, and the night knows how to transition into the deep, restorative quiet of the early hours. You are being invited to follow that lead. You are being invited to let the internal mechanics of your own survival rest, so that the deeper wisdom of your own nature can have room to emerge. If you find yourself drifting, that is perfect. If you find yourself thinking, that is also perfect. The point of this practice is not to reach a state of blankness. The point is to practice the art of putting down the load. Every time you return to the sensation of your own body, every time you acknowledge the thought and let it rest in the bowl, you are strengthening the capacity of your heart to be spacious. You are proving to yourself that you are capable of existing without the constant weight of your own vigilance. Take another slow breath, and this time, let it travel all the way down to your belly. Feel your belly rise and fall. This is the center of your vitality. It is not in your thoughts, and it is not in your achievements. It is in this simple, primal rhythm of life. You are alive. You are here. That is the only victory that matters tonight. Everything else is secondary. The anxieties you have been carrying are secondary. They are shadows on the wall, and the wall is not your life. If the room feels a little cooler, or if you hear a sound outside, let those sensations ground you further. You are firmly rooted in the present moment. The past is a story that is no longer happening, and the future is a story that has not yet begun. You are in the middle of the story, and the middle is where the peace lives. You are the author of this moment, and you have the power to write in a long, calm pause. You have the power to stop the pen. Is there any part of you that is still trying to hold on to the brass canisters? Check your shoulders again. Check your forehead. See if there is a tiny, persistent grip in your fingers. You can release it. You can let the canisters stay on the floor. They will not roll away, and no one will take them. You can leave them there for the night, and if you need to pick them up tomorrow, you can, but for now, they are unnecessary. They are just metal, and you are living, breathing, and deeply deserving of this rest. The bowl is waiting, it is patient. It does not demand that you fill it with anything at all. You can just sit with the empty bowl, experiencing the lightness of your own hands. This is your birthright. This is the state of mind that the keeper of the tower finally discovered when he looked out at the vast, uncaring, and beautiful sea. He realized that the emptiness was not a deficiency. It was the only way he could ever truly be free. Whenever you are ready, you can let the image of the bowl fade into the background of your mind. You do not need to keep track of it. You do not need to remember where it is. You have done the work of acknowledging the load, and now the load is no longer your sole responsibility. You are free to let your awareness drift into the wider, softer spaces of the room. You are free to let the rhythm of your own heart become the only clock you follow. The quiet is deepening now. It is folding itself around you like a soft, heavy blanket. The worries of the day are like dust motes floating in a shaft of light, visible but harmless. They are not landing on you. They are not settling in your heart. You are watching them move through the space, and you are realizing that you are the space itself. You are the sky, and you are the air, and you are the silence that allows the night to be so profound. Continue to let go of the need to be a guardian. The night is doing its own guarding. The earth is turning. The stars are tracking their own long, slow paths, and the silence is holding everything together in a perfect, delicate balance. You are a part of that balance. You are not separate from it. You are not a stranger here. You are home. Let yourself rest in that knowledge. Let your thoughts continue to soften. And let your body continue to sink into the deep, dark comfort of the earth beneath you. You are exactly where you need to be, and you have exactly what you need to be at peace. Years later, deep in the mountains where the silence is so heavy, it feels like a physical presence. There lived a master of the brush named Haruto. He was renowned for his ink paintings of the mist, scenes so delicate that people often felt they were looking into the very heart of the weather. Haruto was a man of intense, burning focus. He believed that to capture the true essence of the mountains, he had to become the mountains. He spent his days watching the fog gather in the valleys and the light fracture against the jagged peaks. He was searching for the perfect image, a singular painting that would finally satisfy the restlessness in his soul. One winter, a drought gripped the mountains. The streams dried up. The inkstones became caked with dust, and the very air seemed to thin out. Haruto grew agitated. He believed that this was his great challenge. If he could only paint the true nature of the drought, if he could show the parched earth and the thirst of the pines, he would finally master his art. He began to paint with a feverish intensity. He worked from before dawn until the stars were cold and high, his movements jagged, his breath short and strained. He was convinced that the secret lay in the friction, in the effort of trying to force his vision onto the paper. In a small, weathered hut near the base of the highest ridge lived a hermit known as the Old Ferryman. He had spent his life moving people across a river that had long since become a trickling creek. He had no boat, yet he still walked to the bank every morning to stand for an hour in the stillness. One afternoon, Haruto descended from his studio, his robes stained with ink, his eyes wild with the exhaustion of his failed attempts to capture the drought. He found the old man sitting on a flat stone, watching the dry riverbed with a calm, unblinking gaze. Haruto demanded to know how the ferryman could sit in such stillness while the mountains were parched and dying. He spoke of the drought as if it were a personal enemy that he had to overcome through his brush. He showed the old man his latest scroll. It was a chaotic mess of ink, filled with dark, aggressive strokes that spoke only of his own internal frustration. The ferryman looked at the painting, then looked at the dry riverbed, and finally, he looked at Haruto. He did not speak for a long time. The wind rattled the dead branches of the willows, but the ferryman remained perfectly still, his hands resting on his knees. He asked the painter to hand him his brush. Haruto hesitated, then passed over the fine go-there instrument that he had cherished for years. The ferryman did not start to paint. He simply dipped the tip of the brush into the dry, dusty gravel of the riverbank. He began to draw in the dirt, creating long, slow, sweeping circles that had no end. He drew for a long time, his movements graceful, fluid, and entirely without effort. When he finished, he placed the brush back into Haruto's hands. He told the painter that he had spent his life trying to paint the wind, but he had forgotten that the wind is not something you capture. He asked Haruto to look at the circles in the dust. He pointed out that the lines were not perfect and they would be erased by the first breeze that came off the peaks. He explained that his life as a ferryman had been a practice of moving with the river, whether the water was high and dangerous or low and silent. When the water was high, he fought to keep his balance. When the water was low, he practiced the art of waiting. He suggested that Haruto was not suffering from the drought of the mountains, but from a drought of the heart, a refusal to allow the season to be exactly what it was. Haruto felt a sudden, sharp ache in his chest. He looked at the circles in the dust, and he saw his own life reflected in their fragility. He had been so busy trying to force the mountain to tell his story that he had completely failed to listen to the mountain itself. He had treated his brush like a sword and his paper like a battlefield. He realized that the ink he used was not just color. It was a manifestation of his own desire to control the world. The ferryman stood up and walked away, leaving the painter alone with his brush and the dry, echoing riverbed. That evening, Haruto went back to his studio. He did not light the lamp. He did not prepare his inkstone. He sat in the darkness, the paper waiting, like a blank, silent mirror. He felt the urge to start, the familiar itch of the vigilance that had defined his entire life. But he remembered the ferryman's circles in the dust. He took a long, slow breath, the first one that had reached his belly in months. He allowed himself to feel the exhaustion, the disappointment, and the dry, hollow sensation of the drought. He did not try to fix it. He did not try to paint it away. He simply sat with it. When he finally picked up his brush, he did not reach for the ink. He held the dry brush over the paper, feeling the weight of it, the texture of the handle, the stillness of the room. He realized that he could paint without the ink. He could paint with the intention, with the movement, with the relationship between his hand and the surface. He made one single, slow stroke across the paper, not of black ink, but of nothing at all. He allowed the empty space to become the subject. He was not creating an image of the drought. He was creating a space where the drought could exist, unjudged and unhurried. It was a small transformation, almost invisible to anyone who might have seen the painting. But for Haruto, it was as if a mountain had shifted. He was no longer trying to prove his worth through the complexity of his work. He was no longer treating his art as a defense against the uncertainty of the world. He was learning to let the brush move with the rhythm of the moment. If his hand shook, he included the tremor. If his mind wandered, he included the pause. He was finally practicing the art of allowing. The days passed, and the drought persisted, but the painter was no longer the same man. He found himself spending hours, just watching the light change on the bark of the pine trees, or listening to the way the mountain breathed when the moon climbed over the ridge. He noticed that his desire to control the outcome was the very thing that had kept him from ever truly seeing the beauty of the landscape. By giving up the need to be the master of the image, he had finally become the witness of the truth. One night, the rain finally came. It was a soft, steady fall that soaked into the earth and turned the dry, dusty paths into dark, rich soil. Haruto sat by his window and watched the transformation, his heart light and open. He did not feel the need to rush out and paint the rain. He did not feel the need to capture it or document it or claim it. He simply felt the coolness of the moisture in the air and heard the music of the drops hitting the roof. He was at peace with the changing of the seasons. He was at peace with the fact that his work was only a small, fleeting response to the much larger story of the world. He felt the tension in his hands finally unravel. He dropped the brush onto the table and let his arms hang by his sides. He was so deeply, profoundly tired, and for the first time, he welcomed that fatigue. It was not the exhausted, resentful fatigue of the keeper, but the sweet, heavy, earned sleepiness of a person who has put down a heavy, unnecessary load. He walked to his sleeping mat and laid down, letting his body settle into the earth, his mind as quiet as the wet earth outside. He realized that the ferryman had been right. He had spent his life trying to paint the wind, never realizing that the wind was always blowing through him. He was not the painter. He was the space where the painting could happen. He was the quiet, attentive silence that stood at the center of the storm. And that was enough. It was more than enough. It was the only thing he had ever needed to be. His thoughts began to lose their sharp, definite edges. They became like the soft, blurred outlines of the mountains in the mist. He did not try to sharpen them. He did not try to hold on to them. He just let them drift away into the dark, rhythmic sound of the rain. He felt the boundary between himself and the room begin to blur. He felt the boundary between his breath and the air outside begin to dissolve. He was becoming a part of the evening, a seamless continuation of the soft, dark, and perfectly balanced world. The brush was still there, but it was just wood and hair, no longer an instrument of his pride. The ink was still there, but it was just soot and water, no longer the medium of his obsession. Everything was exactly what it was, and it was perfect in its simplicity. He closed his eyes, and he did not see the mountains. He saw only the darkness, and the darkness was friendly. It was deep and it was wide, and it was holding him with the same gentleness that the earth held the roots of the pines during the storm. There was no more need to struggle. There was no more need to perform. The drought was over, the rain was falling, and the painter was sleeping. He had stopped trying to capture the reality of the mountains, and in doing so, he had finally become a part of them. He felt a deep, resonant gratitude for the drought, for the hunger, for the frustration, and for the ferryman, who had shown him the empty circles in the dust. They were all part of the path, and he was finally, truly, walking that path with a light and unburdened heart. Can you feel that same shift taking place within you now? As you listen to the story of the painter, notice if there is something in your own life that you have been trying to capture, to force, or to control in the hope that it would make you feel safe. Maybe it is a version of yourself that you think you need to present to the world. Maybe it is a relationship that you are trying to keep from changing. Whatever it is, imagine setting it down for a moment. Imagine setting the brush aside. Imagine trusting that the world will continue to move, that the rain will continue to fall, and that you will be taken care of, even if you do not hold the reins with a white-knuckled grip. There is a profound, quiet strength in this act of surrender. It is not a sign of giving up on your life. It is a sign of giving up the unnecessary burden of being the architect of your own destiny. You are here to experience your life, not to manage it. You are here to feel the weather, not to control the climate. And when you realize this, the exhaustion of the vigil finally begins to lift. You can feel it, can't you? That heavy, leaden pressure in your chest is starting to loosen. The tight, defensive posture of your mind is beginning to open up to the dark, restful silence of the night. You are being invited to rest in the same space that the painter discovered. It is a place of no judgment. It is a place of no expectation. It is the place where you are not the painter, and you are not the painting, but simply the awareness that allows both to exist. And that is all you need to be tonight. Just the awareness, just the breath, just the quiet, steady rhythm of your own heart, beating in time with the turning of the earth. Everything else is secondary, and everything else can wait until the morning light finds you again, renewed, softened, and finally at home in your own skin. You have been operating under the assumption that if you just held the lantern of your mind a little tighter, if you kept your gaze fixed on the horizon with enough intensity, you could finally earn a night of true, unthreatened safety. But observe the cost of this belief. When you assume that the safety of your world depends on your internal vigilance, you are essentially trying to build a dam against a river that never stops flowing. The river is your life, with all its unpredictable currents, its sudden shifts in weather, and its quiet stretches of calm. You are not a builder of dams. You are a passenger on the water, and the exhaustion you feel is the physical evidence of your attempt to hold the river still. The mind creates this second layer of suffering, this extra heavy weight, because it fears that to let go of control is to invite disaster. It tells you that your anxiety is a necessary service, a sentinel that alerts you to every possible shadow in the channel. But this sentinel is working on a ghost crew. It is reporting on ships that sank centuries ago, or ships that are nothing more than light reflecting off the clouds. When you identify with this sentinel, when you believe that you are the concern, you lock yourself into a constant state of internal friction. You are burning your own energy to fight a battle that has already been decided by the laws of nature. Think of it as trying to hold a mirror perfectly level in a high wind. The harder you grip the frame, the more your knuckles ache, the more your focus narrows, and the more you miss the actual reflection of the clouds and the birds moving across the sky. You think you are protecting the reflection by keeping the mirror steady. In reality, you are just making your own hands bleed. Life brings its challenges. This is the first wave, the wind that shakes the mirror. It is inevitable. It is the truth of being human, and no amount of vigilance can stop the wind from blowing. But the second wave, the one that truly drains your spirit, is your insistence that the wind shouldn't be there, or that you are a failure for letting the mirror shake. This is the core of the Buddhist insight. Suffering is not the wind. Suffering is the effort of the mirror holder to argue with the gale. When you stop this argument, you discover something that seems like a paradox. You find that you can still hold the mirror, but you no longer hold it with a desperate, crushing grip. You hold it with a light touch. You allow it to sway. You allow the reflection to ripple. You realize that the beauty of the scene is not in the stillness of the image, but in the way the scene responds to the passing of the storm. You have turned this struggle into an identity. You have decided that to be a responsible, caring, and capable person, you must be a person who is constantly weighing the future. You believe that your identity is tied to the weight of the worries you carry. If you were to walk into a room without your usual list of anxieties, who would you be? The mind fears that you would be nothing. It fears that without the burden, you would dissolve. But this is the ego's final, clever trick. It wants to convince you that your worth is measured by the size of your load. The truth is the opposite. Your worth is the space in which the load is carried. When you set the load down, you are not disappearing. You are finally becoming visible to yourself. You are noticing that underneath the worry, there is a quiet, steady awareness that has been waiting patiently for you to finish your work. This awareness does not need to manage the future. It does not need to replay the past. It is the part of you that knows how to breathe, how to sleep, and how to exist without needing a reason. Consider why you might be so afraid of this silence. Perhaps you feel that if you are not worried, you are not caring enough about the people or the goals that matter to you. But look at the difference. When you worry, you are paralyzed. You are locked in a room in your own head, staring at a wall of projections. When you stop worrying, you are present. You are capable of listening. You are capable of acting with clarity rather than reacting from fear. Worry is not love. Worry is the fear that you have lost control. Love is the willingness to be present with whatever happens, even when the outcome is uncertain. You are not failing by letting go. You are evolving. You are moving from a mode of protection to a mode of connection. When the mind brings up a new, urgent thought, a scenario of what might go wrong, or a sharp, critical voice about your past, do not judge the thought. Recognize it for what it is. It is an old habit, a conditioned response that has been trying to keep you safe, in the only way it knows how. Thank the habit for its effort. Then acknowledge that its service is no longer required. You have upgraded your system. You no longer need to haul the canisters of oil up the stairs because the lighthouse is already lit by the dawn. What happens when you stop adding that second layer of judgment to your own human experience? You discover that pain is manageable when it is not amplified by resistance. A setback is just a setback. A feeling of loneliness is just a feeling of loneliness. When you stop telling yourself that these things mean you are broken or that they are a sign of impending ruin, they lose their charge. They become transient events in the wide, open sky of your life. They arrive. They linger for a time, and then they dissolve, leaving you exactly as you were, whole and essentially untouched. This is the freedom of the lighthouse keeper who finally sits down. He does not stop being a keeper, he just stops being a servant to the phantom ships. He sits and he watches the ocean, and for the first time, he sees the majesty of the waves. He sees that the waves are not attacking the shore. They are simply being the ocean. He sees that he is not separate from the ocean, nor is he its manager. He is a part of the movement. He is a part of the grace. You might feel a sudden, hollow ache when you realize how much time you have spent in the service of the second wave. Do not turn this into a new source of shame. That would just be another layer of the same old habit. Treat this moment of realization with the same tenderness you would offer a child who has been trying to hold up the ceiling. Tell yourself that you did the best you could with the tools you had, and that now you are learning a different, lighter way. The realization itself is the medicine. The moment you see the habit has already begun to lose its grip. There is nothing for you to solve tonight. You do not have to map out a new life or construct a new philosophy. You only need to notice the weight as it settles and notice the lightness as it returns. You are being invited to sink into the truth that you are not the one who keeps the stars in their orbits, and you are not the one who drives the seasons. You are a part of the unfolding. You are the space where the unfolding happens, and that space is wide, and it is deep, and it is perfectly, unconditionally safe. Notice how your body responds to this understanding. Your breath might be deeper now, moving further into your chest and belly. Your muscles might feel like they are finally being allowed to let go of the rigid frame you have been holding them in. You are moving toward the center of your own existence. This is not a place of great activity. It is a place of stillness. It is the temple that the hermit was waiting in, long before the traveler arrived to disturb the silence. You are returning to that temple now. You are returning to the quiet, unburdened core of your own being. Let the thoughts about the future drift away like smoke from a dying candle. They are not real, and they do not require your attention right now. The only reality is the gentle, steady sensation of your own life, moving in a rhythm that you did not create and do not need to sustain. You are invited to stop your efforts. You are invited to step back from the lantern, step away from the edge of the cliff, and simply rest in the warm, dark, and protective embrace of the present moment. You have arrived, and you have nothing left to prove. The wisdom we have explored is not meant to stay behind in the silent rooms of a temple or the high cliffs of a lighthouse. It is meant to walk with you through the noisy, cluttered hallways of your ordinary life. When you are standing in the middle of a busy day, feeling the familiar prickle of anxiety as you check your phone for a message that has not arrived, you are being invited to remember the empty bowl. That ping of panic is just a thought, a momentary gust of wind against the mirror of your mind. You do not have to let it dictate your pulse. You can acknowledge the urge to grasp for reassurance, feel the tightness of it, and then choose to let the bowl sit empty for just a little longer. Think of how often you lie awake in the dark, replaying a mistake from the afternoon, turning it over in your head as if you could somehow edit the past by sheer force of will. Your mind is trying to haul those heavy canisters up the stairs again. It is convinced that if you worry enough, if you suffer enough, you might undo the event. But the event is already gone. It is a wave that has already broken against the shore. By replaying it, you are only burning the oil of your present moment, leaving yourself in the dark when the morning arrives. Next time, try to catch yourself in the act of hauling. Simply say, "I am currently climbing the stairs," and then see if you can put the canisters down, letting the thought be a traveler that is allowed to pass through your room without being invited to stay. Maybe you find yourself comparing your pace to the people around you, feeling that you are falling behind, that you are not enough, or that your life should look more polished and settled than it does. This too is a form of hauling. You are carrying the weight of a standard you did not choose, and you are exhausted by the effort of trying to match a pace that is not your own. You do not have to be a lighthouse for everyone else. You do not have to prove that your channel is navigable. You are allowed to be the painter in the drought, working with the dust and the dry air, finding beauty in the simple act of standing where you are. There are moments when you feel the heavy mantle of responsibility for a relationship, believing that if you are not constantly monitoring the temperature, the whole structure will collapse. You smile for others while your heart feels like a leaden weight, terrified that if you let the smile drop, you will be seen as weak or ungrateful. But you are not the architect of everyone else's weather. You can care deeply. You can be present and kind without needing to control the outcome. You can love someone without turning your love into a desperate, gripping vigilance. When the urge to control rises, pause. Take one breath that goes all the way down to your belly. Feel the space that is already there, held by the same quiet earth that supports your feet. You have spent so long feeling guilty when you are not being productive, as if rest were a sin you had to pay for. But look at the natural world. The sea does not apologize for receding at low tide. The mountain does not worry that it is doing nothing while it sits through the winter. You are part of this natural rhythm, and your need for quiet is not a flaw. It is a necessary season. When you feel that twinge of guilt for sitting still, recognize it as an old, rusted habit. It is a remnant of the keeper's fear that if he stops, the world will forget how to be safe. But the world is already holding itself together. You are safe enough to stop. You are safe enough to be still. Even the simple act of choosing not to obey every command your mind sends you is a profound act of discipline. Your mind is a marvelous, creative machine, but it is also a habit-driven creature that thrives on alarm. It will send you thoughts of inadequacy, thoughts of catastrophe, and thoughts of urgent, life or death decisions. You do not have to treat these thoughts as facts. You can greet them like a person who visits your home uninvited, offering them a polite nod and then continuing to sit comfortably in your chair. You are the space where these thoughts appear, not the thoughts themselves. When you realize this, the hold they have on your nervous system begins to slip. Practice this in the small moments. When you are waiting in line or driving or washing the dishes, notice the itch to be somewhere else or to be someone else. That itch is the habit of the sentinel, looking for a ship that is not there. Instead, come back to your own body. Feel the weight of your heels on the ground. Feel the texture of the cloth against your skin. Feel the way your heart beats in the chest of a person who has done enough, who is enough, and who is currently exactly where they are meant to be. This is not about becoming a perfect, unflappable human. It is about becoming a human who is finally on their own side. You might find that even when you try to let go, the mind brings up a new worry, a new reason why you absolutely must stay on guard. Do not be discouraged. This is not a sign of failure. It is simply the way the mind tries to protect what it perceives as its primary job. When you notice this happening, speak to yourself with the same gentleness you would use with a friend. Say, "I see that you are worried, and I thank you for trying to keep me safe, but we are going to set the canisters down for now. We are going to trust the silence. Your life is a canvas that is being painted in the present, not in the archive of your regrets or the library of your fears. Every time you return to the breath, every time you choose to sit with an emotion instead of building a story around it, you are adding a brushstroke of freedom to that canvas. It does not need to be a masterpiece. It just needs to be honest. It just needs to be yours. And even if your hand shakes, even if the ink is thin or the colors are pale, it is still the work of a life that is fully and beautifully lived. There is a great hidden strength in this kind of life. It is not the strength of a wall that refuses to crack. It is the strength of a reed that knows how to bend with the wind. When you stop fighting the reality of the present, you gain access to a reservoir of energy you never knew you had. You are no longer wasting your life force on the effort of bracing yourself against the future. You are putting that energy back into the living of the day. You are finding that when you stop hauling the canisters, you have the hands free to hold the ones you love, to create, to wander, and to simply be. As you prepare to rest, remind yourself that this practice is a marathon, not a sprint. You will have days where the vigil feels right and necessary. You will have nights where the fear returns, calling you back to the stairs. When this happens, do not judge yourself. Do not add a second layer of pain. Just recognize the pattern, breathe into the tightness, and remember the image of the empty bowl. Remember the painter who stopped trying to capture the drought. Remember that you are the space, and the space is always, always enough. Tonight, you can let the standards of the world fall away. You do not need to be efficient. You do not need to be wise. You do not need to be prepared. You can just be the person who has finally, mercifully, come to the end of the day. The door is locked, the windows are closed, and you are in the sanctuary of your own breath. The world outside is moving according to its own vast rhythmic clock, and it will keep turning without your constant oversight. You are off duty. You are finally, completely off duty. Let your awareness scan your body for any lingering points of held tension. Check the space between your eyebrows. Check the root of your tongue. Check the grip in your hands. Whatever you find, just let it soften like ice turning to water in the sun. You have been holding the world up for long enough. It is time to see what happens when you let the world hold you. It is time to see what happens when you finally, deeply, and unconditionally trust the gravity that is cradling you right now. The silence of the room is not empty. It is filled with the presence of your own life, returned to its rightful owner. You are the guest of honor. In your own heart tonight, there is no one to impress, no debt to pay, and no future to secure. There is only the rhythm of your own steady breath and the gentle, dark comfort of the night. You are doing perfectly. You are exactly where you are, and that is the only place you have ever really been. Let the thoughts fall away, one by one like leaves, dropping into the deep, still water of a mountain lake. There is nowhere else to go. There is nothing else to do. There is only this quiet, this breath, this rest. The lighthouse is dark now, and the oil canisters are set aside, and the heavy brass lantern has cooled. In the night air, there is no need to pace the gallery anymore. There is no need to watch the horizon for ships that are not yours to guide. The sea remains vast and shifting and indifferent, but it is no longer your burden. The tide rolls in and the tide rolls out, and the rocks at the base of the cliffs hold their ground without asking you for permission. You can join them in this stillness. You can become as solid as the stone, as fluid as the water, and as spacious as the night that surrounds the tower. Feel the floor beneath you, firm and unmoving. The tower does not sway, and you do not have to sway. With your thoughts, let your limbs grow heavy as the iron chains that once moored the ships in the channel. Every muscle in your legs, every tendon in your back is finally allowed to lose its grip. The tension that has lived in your shoulders like a permanent guest is dissolving into the cool, dark air. Your breath is no longer something you have to manage. It is moving through you like the wind, moving through the open gallery, slits, automatic and constant and free. You are the empty bowl that Kale brought to the tower. You are the space where the night is invited to rest. The thoughts that once felt like urgent demands are now just ripples on the surface of a deep, dark pool. They arise, they move, and they disappear. You do not need to reach for them. You do not need to name them. You do not need to decide what they mean. They are simply part of the quiet life of the world, and they have no power to disturb the deep, undisturbed floor of your own awareness. The silence here is not empty. It is filled with the feeling of a work finally completed. You have climbed the stairs for a lifetime, and the labor has been enough. Your hands, once stained with soot and swollen from the weight of the oil, are now resting softly, palms open to the dark. They are empty, and in that emptiness, there is finally a space for grace to enter. You have nothing to defend. You have no tower to maintain. You have no light to keep burning against the encroaching dark, because the dark is not an enemy. It is a soft, velvet curtain that has been waiting to close around your heart and cradle you. The stars above the lighthouse are not looking for ships. They are simply shining, a steady, silent rhythm that requires no audience. You are invited to join their stillness. Let your mind become as quiet as the starlight. Let your body become as still as the foundation of the cliff. There is nothing to fix tonight. The problems you were so intent on solving have been placed in the bowl, and the bowl is resting on the stone bench. It will be there in the morning if you choose to pick it up. But for now, it is enough to simply exist. Everything you were afraid of losing is already safe in the flow of the night. You are held by the gravity of the earth. You are covered by the blanket of the dark, and you are surrounded by a silence that knows your name. There is no need to hold your breath to keep the world turning. There is no need to keep your eyes open to ensure the morning arrives. The dawn will come in its own time, and it will be as gentle as the rising of the tide, requiring nothing of you until the very moment it touches your skin. Your eyes are becoming so soft and your thoughts are becoming so slow. Each breath is a deepening of the surrender. Each heartbeat is a reminder that you are alive, and that being alive is the only duty you have ever had. You have been a lighthouse keeper, a painter, a ferryman, and a watcher. But now you are only yourself. You are the person who is finally coming home to the stillness. You are the person who is finally laying down the heavy, rusted tools of the past and stepping into the wide, unburdened field of the present. Let the sounds of the night, the distant, rhythmic pulse of the surf, the soft whistle of the wind against the stone, become the only music you listen to. They are not asking you to do anything. They are just being what they are. And you are just being what you are. There is a perfect harmony in this, a secret, silent agreement that everything is exactly as it should be, without your intervention. The tower stands, the tide turns, and you are resting. You are resting, and the rest is deep, and the rest is honest, and the rest is the only thing that has ever been true. Feel the last vestiges of the day drifting away, like fine mist, being burned off by the morning sun. The worries are shadows, the regrets are echoes, and the future is a dream that does not need to be dreamt tonight. You are held in the palm of the dark, and the dark is kind, and the dark is final. You are drifting into a place where the words have no meaning, where the labels fall away, and where the self you thought you had to defend simply melts into the peace of the world. For a long time, the door to the room where you do not have to be anyone at all. You are walking through it now. You are leaving the stairs. You are leaving the oil. And you are leaving the need to be the keeper of the light. You are becoming the light itself, not the kind that burns and flickers, but the kind that is simply there, part of the darkness, part of the peace, part of the vast, breathing quiet. What if the rest you have been searching for was never a reward for your labor, but the very earth beneath the lighthouse, waiting for you to stop walking so you could finally feel its steady support?